Be there to take the call, otherwise you don't get the cash. Okay, our next guest has a fascinating story to tell. Last year, she became the first transgender actor to play the part of a transgender person in a mainstream TV programme. The programme is BBC Two's hit sitcom Boy Meets Girl, and she stars as Judy. Please welcome Rebecca Root. So, Boy Meets Girl, for people who haven't seen it, what's it about?
It's a love story between somebody who's a little bit older than the other, and the younger person is a guy, a cisgender guy, and the older person is a trans woman, and I play the older person. Okay,
so this is you and Leo on your first date. You're Judy, he's Leo. This is the first date. Let's have a look.
There's something that I need to tell you. I could tell you later, or I could tell you now, and I'd rather tell you now. I was born with a penis. Hi.
Hi. Are you ready to order?
I think we might need a minute. Maybe a little bit longer.
No problem.
Feel free to ask me anything. Just nothing too personal.
There you go. That's what you should say to me now. Ask me anything, nothing too personal.
Nothing too personal. Yeah, it's nice to see it again, actually. I hadn't seen that clip for a while, so it's nice. Brought back some nice memories.
That's a great clip, very funny. So Judy and you, are there similarities?
Yes, I mean, I'm a woman in her 40s, and I'm also trans. Apart from that, I don't live at home. My character lives at home with her mum and sister. I'm single, actually. At the start of the series, yes, she's single, so there is that similarity. But yeah, I'm still single.
Right.
Yeah.
It was well received by the transgender community, and you've got loads of reaction from them. What sort of reaction?
Oh, it was great. Really supportive. People writing to me saying that they had had the confidence to come out to their peer group or their parents, their family, their partners maybe, gave them the confidence to, you know, move on with whatever life journey they're undertaking, their transition perhaps. So it felt really positive, and I was very privileged to be part of that.
There have been transgender characters before, but they've been played by normal people. No, I said that on purpose. I said that on purpose.
Yes, I know you did.
Yeah, because there's a whole language around transgender that, and people sort of, some people are fearful of saying the wrong thing.
Yes, exactly.
Nobody wants to offend, I think.
Yeah.
So give us a sort of a brief glossary.
Well, first of all, don't say someone's normal. I mean, somebody else said that to me once when I was trying on a dress. She said to me, "You look just like my normal customers." I thought, well, thanks very much, you know. But no, so the terminology, and it is a bit confusing, especially as there are more and more trans people in the public eye and in the population at large generally. So the terminology is becoming more and more in currency. And we would describe somebody who identifies as the gender with which they're assigned at birth as cisgender.
So that's me?
I assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know. You don't know, do you? You never know what's underneath someone's skin,
you're right,
so,
cisgender.
Cisgender. I don't quite know the etymology. It's spelled CIS, gender. And then somebody who identifies with another gender is trans.
That's you?
That's me.
Okay.
And that's kind of it. There's a little asterisk as well, which you sometimes might see, and it's trans star, which means the umbrella, which sort of encompasses transsexual, transgender, transvestites, you know, anybody who kind of identifies with any other gender than that with which they were assigned at birth.
Okay. Just on a bit of a tangent now, you've a strong Irish connection. Your mum was from where originally?
Clontarf.
Right.
Yeah.
When did she leave Ireland?
In the 60s. Yeah, she came over to England, and I was born in England. But I'm very proud of my Irish heritage, despite the English accent. I must say, I've got my Claddagh ring here.
Yes.
You know, it still shows that I'm single, of course.
And did you holiday here when you were younger?
Yes, very much. Yeah, we used to come over in the 70s and early 80s and stay with my grandparents, and then we'd go and see some cousins out in the countryside, and we'd go up north and see other cousins. It was great. We'd have a whole sort of summer-long break, and that kind of was every summer.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you don't really appreciate, you know, what you've got. And then in the 80s, all those people started moving to England, and so we stopped coming, which is a shame. So,
and in your childhood, when did you realise that, you know, there was something different going on in your head than your friends?
Probably around age 4 or 5.
That early?
Yeah, yeah.
And how did it manifest itself?
Well, you just start to understand that there's a difference between your body and, say, your sister's body. When you're that young, you do observe differences, and you think, oh, that's why is that? Why do I have that thing and she has something else? And why don't I have what she has? Yeah. It's a very puzzling and difficult state to live with. And
have you got a sister?
I've got 2 sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you wear their clothes?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the older one, the younger one was much younger.
Yes.
So
in secret, or?
Yeah. And then, well, when I suppose, when you're very little, you kind of play dressing up, and then I think you know, society was less kind of enlightened. I wouldn't say that my parents were sort of weren't horrible to me, but they didn't really understand how to cope with somebody who was exhibiting this behavioural pattern. So I was not exactly encouraged, put it that way.
And were you communicating to them that you felt differently?
Well, I suppose I didn't really have the vocabulary with which to articulate that, but I suppose the practice of wearing my sister's clothes, I suppose, or trying on my mum's lipstick and the big shoes, and playing up princess dress up and everything, like every other little girl does, I suppose. That was kind of enough, I suppose. But yeah.
So I'd imagine it got more difficult in your teens and your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Very difficult when you're sort of. Then I moved away from home when I was 18. I went to drama school in London, and London, of course, was sort of this limitless possibility of doing things, and so you sort of thought, well, okay, that's great, but there's still something more that needed to be done, and it took a while really to actually work out what it was that I needed to do.
And were you in relationships?
I had relationships, yeah.
With a man or a woman?
Mostly with women, but I have had relationships with very brief ones with men. So.
Were you still then leading a secret life where you'd go off and dress as a woman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So sort of suppressing that, and especially when I started acting professionally, I was still presenting male. So that was a bit of a. That was a bit difficult.
So you were acting sort of on stage and off stage, really? Yeah,
precisely. And it was exhausting.
Yeah. And when did it reach a tipping point where you knew that something had to give?
That would have been around my mid-20s, mid to late 20s. I came out of one relationship, and I thought, well, was quite a long relationship. And I thought, at this point, this is now the chance that I've got to really explore and talk to people, talk to doctors, specialists, whatever. So I sought that help, but it still took a very long time to come to fruition that I kind of finally came down on. I thought that maybe I could just be a bit of both, or half and half, or part-time or something, but that's as much of a I've got to choose my words carefully, but it's an equally distressing state to be, Okay. So I realised that actually.
Because I read an interview where you said that it was sort of transition or suicide that it came to that. Was that serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, yeah. But no, it got to a point where I felt that I was either going to sort of call it a day, or I was going to do something about it. And of course, when you get to that point, you think, right, well, I've got to do something about it.
Yeah. And what's the process then?
Well, you speak to the medical professionals, and there's a specialist service in London at Charing Cross Hospital. So the time I was seeing those people at the end of the 20th, this sounds crazy when I say at the end of the 20th century.
Yeah.
You think, my God, that was last century.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was still a bit of a waiting list, but that waiting list now has gone much, much longer. You know, people are waiting a year or so to see these people. So it's a great demand.
And you have to do this sort of test for 2 years.
Yeah, they
so
call
what,
it
you change your name.
Yes, they call it the real life test.
Okay. You live as a woman, is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, test sounds a bit like it's not a driving test.
No, but I mean,
is
this to see psychologically if you're...
Yeah, it's to see if you're that you're able to hold down a job or relationships or whatever in your desired identity, and so some people do that for a year. The NHS asked for 2 years, and that was 03 through 05. And then not everybody elects for surgery. Some people continue with various...
And did you?
I did, but you know, it's just part of the process that I followed.
You said to me when we were on the radio, you said it's what's inside, not what's between your legs that counts.
Yeah.
So I would imagine then it had been so tough all those years that it was a huge relief when you finally transitioned.
Oh my God. Well, you know what, Ray? It was actually the relief was making the decision. And I say this to anybody who's tumbling an idea around your heads and you can't make your mind up. When you do make your mind up and you do actually decide that you're going to do something, the weight off your shoulders was wonderful. My God! And then you sort of go through the.
And it doesn't make it easier. Like you're in that sitcom which is on BBC Two. Caitlyn Jenner is on reality TV on the cover of Vanity Fair. You were in that movie, small part, The Danish Girl, which is the story of the first transgender.
Yeah, or at least the first person who had at least partially successful surgery, which at that time was groundbreaking. And obviously, in less enlightened times, people were less willing to experiment with such operational procedures. So yeah, Lily Elbe was her name, and she's the character played by Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah. And you were there, were you playing a transgender character in?
No, that was the great thing. I was actually playing a cisgender person.
Right.
So it kind of goes round and round.
And do you imagine, would you imagine you got to partly because you were trying, not...
I think, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the producers, Tom Hooper, the director, and the producers particularly wanted to engage with the trans community. And so myself and another trans actor, Jake Graff, who's a British actor, he also had a small part in the film, and we did a lot of publicity when the film came out. And yes, and there were other trans people in the film.
We're talking here, and you've talked. I think you've mentioned a few times about more enlightened times. But I would imagine is there still negative reaction to you, or?
I don't know. We'll have to see what Twitter does at the end of the show.
I wouldn't pay any attention to it.
No, exactly. To be honest with you, I'm living my life, and I'm very happy. And if people have a problem with me, then sorry. There's the door. You know.
Yeah. So Boy Meets Girl is back for a second season.
Yeah, we just finished filming. We just finished filming the second season, and it should be out, I guess, in the autumn at some point on BBC Two. And I was amazed that you get BBC Two here.
Oh, we get everything here.
But
we get everything.
That's crazy. Because we don't get RTE in England.
You're missing out.
So unfair.
You're missing out.
Right. So unfair.
Yeah. So what are you hanging around for the weekend, or?
Yes, I'm here for the. I'm here for Easter. And when you first asked me on the show, I thought, well, this was a suitable date for both of us. And then I realised it was Easter. I thought, great, I'll have Easter in Dublin. And then I realised it was the centenary of the Rising. And I thought, oh, wow, that's going to be exciting. And of course, now I realise the enormity of it, with all the publicity and the city centre being with the parade and everything.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to soaking up the atmosphere. And I want to go and see my mum's old house in Clontarf as well.
Great. Well, listen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Rebecca Root, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, 10 years ago, our next guest was a top salesman at IBM. He gave it all up for the